Dr. Sean Murphy is sitting inside his house, taking in all the sounds when a knock on his door reveals one of his neighbors who is in need of some batteries as her controller died in the middle of her game. He says he lives in 33, and she lives in 34. He tells her he works at a hospital. She says that is cool and he goes to get her some batteries. At the hospital, Dr. Claire Brown takes a call and rushes to Dr. Melendez and Dr. Jared Kalu to tell them they have a liver. He asks for the longevity of a liver transplant. When he is given the answer, Sean questions if he knew the answer. Melendez puts Claire and Sean on liver pickup while Jared preps their patient for the transplant. Dr. Marcus Andrews is scrubbing in for a breast reconstructive surgery when Allegra Aoki comes in to talk to him about his 4 p.m. patient. She wants aces on this because the patient is really close to making the foundation his tax relief. She is looking for a fail-safe on his procedure and wants him to make Dr. Melendez his second. He is shocked that he is doubting his abilities and reiterates she needs everything to be perfect. On the roof, Claire asks how Sean is doing with all the noise. He says he likes helicopters but admits he has never been on one. There is 7 hours and 44 minutes left for the viability of the liver as they are situated into the helicopter. Claire is upset that Jared gets to do the surgery while they get pizza delivery, but Sean isn't really listening as he is visualizing how the helicopter really works. Jared is questioning Chuck about his activities and how he is feeling. In the middle of their review, Chuck gets a call from his daughter, saying he needs to see her. Dr. Brown and Dr. Murphy arrive at the other hospital and learn the liver has been out of the body for over 3 hours. Sean takes the liver out of the cooler, sees there is nothing wrong and replaces it back into the cooling unit. Claire calls Dr. Aaron Glassman, tells Claire not to try to think about what is in Sean's mind. He tells her if she wants to connect with him, she will have to find her own way in. With only 4 hours 45 minutes left of viability, they walk back to the helicopter and Sean says they are not leaving. The pilot walks towards them saying the clouds are rolling in too quick and it could be an hour or 3, no one knows how long. Claire says they will need another ride. At the desk, Claire works on a police escort to get the liver across town to their hospital. Dr. Andrews wants to see his patient alone. He admits he hasn't quit smoking but complains that he can't enjoy a drink of scotch with a huge hole in his mouth. Andrews explains he is going to graft from his leg to form a new cheek but admits it won't be cheap. Sean and Claire are still at the hospital with 4 hours and 14 minutes remaining. Sean tells Claire to tell Dr. Glassman that he might be late for their lunch together. When she hangs up, she asks how he knows about the weather, but before he can talk too much about it, the police escort arrives and he stalls when he sees the lights, making him flashback to when he was placed in the back of a police car, where he is hitting the barrier saying, "He promised me." Claire comes back to him, asks the police to turn off the lights and Sean recovers, carrying the liver. He wants to know the name of the donor and Claire says it's Oliver. Melendez comes to Andrews' office, who offers to make time to help with the free flap, but Andrews says he is the chief of surgery. He says it's not a coup but to ensure the hospital is first on his donation list. Andrews is aware of the stakes but Melendez says it doesn't make him any less of a surgeon if he is there. Andrews refuses his help. Jared returns to the lab, and there is alcohol in Chuck's system. He insists they run the labs again. Claire and Sean are 17 minutes out when Sean looks at the X-rays. He tells Claire he has a girl neighbor but doesn't reveal anything else. Suddenly the temperature is going up and Claire says it's urgent for them to find ice now. Jared comes to see Chuck, who admits 3 days ago he had a drink at his daughter's graduation. He wanted to feel, just for that day, to feel normal, so he had a glass of champagne. Claire and Sean find a store but their ice machine is broken. She begins to pack in frozen vegetables as Sean is fascinated by the slushy machine. He remembers when the police gave him one as he wanted for child services. He turns to Claire saying the frozen vegetables will not work but blocks her out again. Melendez and Jared talk about Chuck, and the champagne he drank. Sean tells Claire the liver has to be submerged to cool. They begin to fill the cooler with the slushy mix but he doesn't answer any of her questions. She realizes he doesn't like questions, and both smile as the temperature begins to drop. Melendez and Jared realized Chuck was telling the truth and they can still work on him getting the transplant. Andrews throws out his entire lunch and sits with Dr. Glassman asking for advice. He realizes that Andrews is upset that he is no longer the young star at the hospital but Melendez is. Glassman asks if he is a chief who wants to be top surgeon or is he a chief who wants to be president. If it's the latter, take his ego and shove it in a cupboard somewhere and start acting presidential. He takes Glassman's apple and walks away. Chuck wants to know if he deserves the liver, saying he has been dying for a long time, he didn't lead a great one and he could have been a greater man and better dad. He admits drinking too much, and has an older son, he hasn't seen in over 3 years. He sees the people waiting, knows their faces and names, they all have stories and they are all in it together. He broke the rules. Before he can continue talking, he goes code blue. Jared checks Chuck and discovers he has blood in his esophagus. Melendez comes in and together they are able to bring his pressure up. In the locker room, Melendez says he had 3 months to live at best, he needs to get this liver or he dies. Claire jokes that she needs a police escort every day to work. Sean grabs the X-ray again as he remembers when he saw a photo of a liver while Dr. Glassman came to see him as a child before child services took him. Sean opens the cooler and begins to feel the liver again. Claire says she doesn't know what he is looking for. The scan shows no clot but Sean can feel it. Claire confirms it must have happened before they stored it and they inform the police they need to stop right there so they can perform surgery right now. As Sean visualizes what needs to be done, him and Claire perform surgery on the liver to remove the clot. Right on the highway, they work together to preserve the integrity of the organ. Dr. Andrews talks to his rich patient, assuring him he will be just fine. Dr. Melendez talks to Chuck and his family, saying his liver failure has progressed considerably. He says he has 2 to 3 months and realizes that Chuck didn't tell his family. He says the final decision is out of his hands but he is going to do everything he can to convince the committee that in spite of his one drink, his daughter runs after Melendez saying she gave him the drink and if he doesn't get the liver, she is the one who killed him. In the meeting with the committee, Andrews asks if he expects them to throw out the rules. He says Chuck hasn't earned it and this is a technicality. Jessica says if they move forward the hospital could lose transplant privileges. Glassman says he could go either way. Andrews wants to know if saving this patient is worth the risk of not being able to save hundreds of others. Melendez says he doesn't have hundreds, only one and his name is Chuck. Dr. Andrews thinks he has done his surgery but suddenly there are complications and is told to do things quickly as their patient is being strangled inside. He calls for Melendez. With 57 minutes remaining on the viability of the liver, Claire and Sean arrive at the hospital. Claire is told devastating news on the phone, saying Chuck has been moved to the bottom of the list and another hospital is getting the liver. An ambulance comes to get the liver and Sean tells them his name is Oliver. Sean says it's a good day, they saved a life, just not Chuck's. Dr. Melendez comes to see Chuck and his family packing up and leaving the hospital. He tells Chuck's daughter it is not her fault. He joins Andrews and smiles as they see their patient being wheeled out of his room. Sean returns home, places his bag at his door and knocks at 34. He asks if he can have his batteries back that she borrowed. She says it's insane that he is a surgeon. She says her name is Leah, and he says his name is Dr. Sean Murphy and it's nice to meet her and walks back to his own apartment. Melendez stares at the ceiling as Jessica sleeps beside him. Sean goes outside with a can of cat food for the homeless cat outside his apartment and watches from inside. At the restaurant, Dr. Glassman moves young Sean's dish away from him, hands him the book he was looking at. He tells Sean he can stay with him tonight and tomorrow they will figure out the rest. The next morning, at the hospital, Sean and Dr. Glassman enjoy breakfast together. Make sure to like and subscribe the video and turn on notifications so you never miss videos like this. Thanks for watching.